Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Facebook Live broadcast. I'm Steve Altition, Director of Client Partnerships here at Pacific Cascade Legal. And today I'm here with family counselor and coach Julia Hoffman with a hot take. Divorce does not harm kids. Parental discourse does. And we're going to talk about how to leave your marriage at the dissolution door when transitioning into a co-parenting role. Good morning, Julia. How you doing?
Hi, Steve. Nice to see you. Thanks for having
Nice to
me.
see you too. So before we start, just want to ask you to talk about a little bit about yourself, what you do, why this is such a important topic that you would like to cover.
Sure. Well, I'm based in Dallas, Texas, but I lived in just for your listeners, I lived in Washington State for 20 years. So I did my undergrad and graduate degrees there. So Pacific Northwest is in my heart. And I got into this specific co-parenting, helping parents, divorcing parents, learn how to parent together through the divorce and afterwards, because I went through it myself 5 years ago. I'm a child of divorce, so I know it from the kiddo perspective, and I learned about it in my work as a marriage and family therapist. So it feels it's very rewarding to me because of the impact it has on children, the positive impact.
I love it. Okay, today I got to tell you, this may be our longest title we've ever had. It's a mouthful, but I really like it.
I was impressed. I was impressed. Yeah.
Yeah, but it does sort of have two parts. The hot take, divorce does not harm kids. I think that I want to start with that. It's sort of because a lot of people, when you say that, go, you know, what do you mean?
Yeah. Yeah. They give you a face.
Yeah, and they give me a face. Now, every good family law attorney agrees. It's not necessarily the divorce, it's the parental discourse that causes problems. But like I said, not necessarily everyone else thinks about that. So, can we kind of talk about why parental conflict really is the culprit?
Sure. Well, I'll start just with my own experience. I thought that getting divorced from my girl's dad after being married for 11 years and together 15, I thought that just the act of getting divorced was the thing that was going to harm our children. Um,
Yeah.
and many clients do too. It's a feeling of defeat before you've even gotten started. But the term that I love to think about is um, causation versus correlation. So, divorce, there's a correlation with divorce and conflict and an impact, a possible negative impact on children. But divorce is not the cause. It's correlated because with divorce comes stress and um, a lot of transitions and really having to readjust your life. But just that word is not what it is. And so, what I like to try to do is empower parents and let them know that you actually have a lot of control over how this looks for your family and the outcome for your child going forward.
Yeah, yeah. It's a lot of our attorneys say that one of the in the first meeting and the second meeting and sometimes thereafter, it's getting past shame, blame.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting past all of that stuff that makes you feel bad because it has such a tint of being something you should not be doing.
Yeah, you said the golden word, shame. So shame is really what I believe and what the research says is the biggest one of the biggest problem. It's the problem child is shame. So there's a shame rage theory. So the more badly about ourselves we feel, because that's what shame is, feeling bad about yourself, the angrier we get right? Just in simple terms, as a way to sort of protect ourselves. So because the culture, because how our society sees divorce as something to be ashamed of, as something where you've failed. It's not something that is looked upon with warmth, even though there are a lot of positives about it, which I'm sure you have experienced in your practice. A lot of positives for families, but the shame is what brings out this part of ourselves that really has a very difficult time not being self-protective. And then we get nasty. And I'm sure you definitely have seen that side. And that is the barrier, going from being married to being co-parents. That shame in the middle and that contention really really messes with people's minds. So
Yeah,
that's the
it like you said, it turns people into angry people eventually.
yeah.
And I mean, I don't know how many uh, divorcing couples, what percentage, but it's got to be a big one, who says the other parent is a narcissist. You know, so
Oh,
you're starting off from that, and really it is. It's sort of that shame thing, like I got to blame somebody.
yeah, yeah. And the I'm sure you've heard this like, I don't even know who this person is anymore,
Yeah.
right? Like, I did see sides of my now ex-husband, I like to say the father of my children, that I had not necessarily seen before because we had not been in that situation before, where we're having to literally separate, completely change our relationship and separate it, which means, all these buzzwords, boundaries, setting new boundaries. They're no longer your person, your main confidant. And that's really hard to do and stay warm and, like yourself. So I think people get really confused,
Yeah.
and they see that as, well, maybe you never loved me, or they see that
Yeah.
as something so hurtful, when in fact it's a really important part of the process. That part has to happen. That untangling has to happen if you want to have a friendly
Yeah.
relationship afterwards.
It, and it feels like, and you had talked about this. I saw it on one of your podcasts, and about kind of shame leading to rage, and shame leading to fear, and fear being sort of emphasized by all of the stories you hear from other people. I mean, it's all sort of compounds even before you get started to try to go through the divorce.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love the word zeitgeist. So it is in the zeitgeist, that it's in our culture and our what we see, that divorce is supposed to be bad. And
Yeah.
I think without examples of positive outcomes for families, again, people don't even know what's possible. And this, I think, especially applies to mothers. Try to not generalize, but for mothers, there's also a societal stigma that
Oh God,
you
yes.
don't leave your babies. I mean, a good mother is there all the time, does all the things, and that's obviously not that's not the definition of a good mother. I was
Yeah.
a much worse mother before I divorced. It was really, I was not a good mom. I mean, I tried hard, but I was not, because I was really unhappy. I was really
Yeah.
miserable.
Yep.
I am so much better now because of my because I'm happy. Both of us are very happily, I won't speak for him, but I know he's happily remarried, the kid's dad, and I am as well. And also that we get breaks. We get parenting breaks. So I'm jumping ahead to the positives, but I wish that more parents, especially mothers, would embrace that.
Oh, yeah. So obviously, you know, people come to you, and probably in this situation, they just it's unfixable. But you don't believe that. You think it's fixable, and we talk about that. So if I came in and I said, "Well, this is just all I can't talk to them. I hate them. Everybody hates me. What can I do? How can I get out of this? How can I start? What would you tell me?"
Yeah. Well, the biggest thing that's missing in this moving from married to divorced is some kind of ritual, or some kind of, like, every other big life occasion, from birth, graduation, wedding, death, like everything has something to mark it, except divorce. I mean, I went into the weeds. I dug deep on this one. There's no, like, we don't have any, you just go from married one day to, legally divorce the next day.
Yeah.
And so what I think needs to happen is you go through the period of time where you're deciding about divorce, then you decide about divorce, then you're in that legal process. But a lot has to be done emotionally during that time. A lot has to be forgotten, let go of. It's your own work, but also I think some of the work can be done together. And so I try to help the two of them understand where the other person is. The other person is hurt. The other person is scared, things like that. And then that they both really want the same thing, which is they love and love their family, they love their children, and they want them to be okay. That was our main goal. We just wanted our kids to be okay.
Yeah. I love that when you're talking about you're sort of relearning, you have to understand new things. And so you're really not, I just made me think of this, you're really not, flunking out of marriage, you're graduating into divorce.
Ooh, I'm going to borrow that, Steve.
You
That's
can
good.
have it.
Yeah. Okay.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and you also
right.
talk about closure, which I think is just incredibly important.
It is. It's without the closure, the resentments and the feelings kind of just keep, seeping into life and into the conflict. And there's, again, like I said, there's closure that you can do together, and then there's closure you can do just yourself.
Yeah.
But you are no longer, in my opinion, this is not like a hard and fast rule, but you're no longer able to fight, argue with your ex the same way you did when you were married, when you're divorced. You sort of give up that right. You don't have that relationship anymore to talk to each other in that way. And it really makes you, if you're lucky and you can do it, it makes you behave much better, which is better for everyone. But that takes a lot of self-restraint. It takes a lot of work. But that's why I think if people do it during the divorce process as soon as possible, they can get to that place of sort of resolve or peace faster. And then it's not, you're at your children's wedding and, somebody says, well, I can't believe your father brought blah, blah, blah. That stuff's it just needs to be gone. It needs to be done.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty direct about that.
Yeah. Again, I was listening to something you said, and you kind of were talking about this with you got to start right out with what you call, I think, strong boundaries.
Hmm.
And that makes sense because you have to, you aren't going to get there if you let all this other stuff continue to happen.
Yeah. And it's weird. I mean, it's weird to say. So actually, I have a list of this for people because I think it's easier to check things off a list than come up with it yourself. It's weird to say, hey, person that I produced humans with, I don't want you to text me after 7 p.m. And please give me 30 minutes notice before you come over. Right? Like it's insulting. It feels
Yeah.
insulting. But the reason for it is because you're just trying to establish this new normal
Right.
of being together, this new way of respecting each other that and like really having it sink in that you do not have the same relationship as you did before. It's not like being married and being angry at each other. It's almost, there's a show. I forget the name of the show, but there's a show, and this is always what I think of. The man works at this big company, and when you work at the big company and you're in the building, you know everything, you remember everything. But then when you leave work for the day at the building, everything is wiped away because there's so much going on. There's high uh, confidential whatever at the building, and you walk out and you don't remember anything. But the man's walking around in the world and things kind of seem familiar. This person seems familiar, but he doesn't have the memory. It's almost, to me, it's like that. It's like
Yeah.
I see this person, I know this person very, very well, but I put it in the back, like I put it in the back of my mind because that part of our relationship is it's over, and there's a lot of grief around that.
Yeah.
So in your question about closure, allowing yourself to grieve is
Yeah.
really, really important. um, mhm.
I believe that too.
Yeah,
The
whether you wanted it, whether you were the one that wanted the
Yeah.
divorce, usually there's someone brings it up, someone maybe initiates. Whether you wanted the divorce or didn't want the divorce, both people have to grieve.
And I really like that you said whether, you do it together or not, because, I could come in, I could say, well, I want to have closure, but my spouse won't let me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No, yeah, then don't rely on your spouse to do closure.
Yeah, yeah, they actually don't have anything to do with it. It
Yeah.
really just takes one person, because similar to that, I hear that a lot. They, my ex will not co-parent peacefully.
Yeah.
They're not going to be on board, or they don't want to meet with, together, all three of us. Um, that's okay. It really takes one person to lead the way, to extend the olive branch, to model good behavior, and not play into that dynamic, and that really makes a big difference. Now, I'm
Yeah.
not talking about an abusive relationship. I'm not talking about um, I'm not talking about the extremes, but just two people that have big feelings about divorce. You can go a long ways with one person um, setting the tone.
And that's unfortunately maybe more than 50% of divorces, is that there is going to be one who's more willing to sort of put it aside or get it
Mm-hmm,
closed than the other.
mm-hmm,
Um, and that's where the communication sort of comes in, I think. You had talked about, how you should communicate calmly,
mm-hmm,
respectfully.
mm-hmm,
And then you were talking about the whole thing about like a text. Part of, I think, that is it's not just talking to each other, it's texting, emailing. It's kind of the whole ball of wax. And sometimes doing one rather than the other, maybe it'd be a better approach. I don't know.
Exactly. We did much better on the phone. He and I, much better on the phone. When we could, I could hear his tone, he could hear my tone. It felt better than texting. Texting, I would, interpret things one way, or he didn't use an exclamation point or whatever it was. So that worked for us. So I tell people, do the communication method that leads to the least amount of misunderstandings and conflict. And then it just has to be about the kids. Yeah. Right. So it's not that you can't have conflict, because you're going to, because you would have it if you were married. Like anybody raising children together, you're going to have disagreements. But like if you find out that your child has been staying up till midnight at their other parents' house multiple nights, and then when they get to your house, they're really tired, and this goes on for a little bit, not like one night up late. It goes on for a little bit. You're noticing it's really affecting them at school. So the communication is, hey, I'm noticing that Steve is having a really hard time waking up in the morning, and what can we do to get him on a better sleep schedule, as opposed to what the heck are you doing letting him stay up till midnight, as opposed to, like, not a personal attack, but just how do we solve this problem for our child.
And the kids who are, in the room a lot, or, it's like, to me, they're going, wow, that sounds reasonable. I mean, it kind of gets into the brain that, mm-hmm. this is, they're not being crazy,
Mm-hmm. The children, you're saying, when they're listening?
Yeah.
Oh, I shudder when I think about how I talked to my kid's dad when we were married. Yeah. I mean, I didn't realize it until afterwards how bad it was. But I spoke horribly to him in front of them, and I like to say I am a much better ex-wife than I was a wife. Like, okay, I didn't do that my best, but I'm going to give it my all to be the best co-parent that I can possibly be to him, and now him and his wife, because, well, they deserve that, and my kids deserve to see that. They deserve to see. So I speak I'm honest, but I speak very highly. I still call him dad. I don't say your dad. My mom always said your father. Anytime it would start with your father, it was something negative about my father. So I say dad. I say, I don't say dad's house. I usually call it the street name. I tell people to call it the street name, because both houses, or both places they live, the kids live, are the kids' houses.
Right.
When you lived in one house, you didn't say mom and dad's house. It's like their house. So I try to use really like neutral and phrases and words that, well, I just try to use the right phrases and words, and it's a trial and error.
It's like one of the biggest problems parents talk about with their kids is that it divides the kids. Mm-hmm. And everything you're talking about seems to be like not dividing. It's mm-hmm. This isn't his and this isn't mine, and that just sort of, that whole mentality just slowly seeps into somebody.
Yeah, divides the kids, like they choose a preferred parent, or yeah. And if the parents promote that, or allow that, or encourage that, and are not working together to not let that happen, that can happen and does happen. In my experience, both personally, like with my sisters, and now with my children. I have 4 daughters. I guess I didn't say that in the beginning. I'm a mom. I have 4 daughters. I'm married to my beautiful wife, Christy. Kind of went right to Washington, but and I have 4 dogs, so my family is very important to me. But if there's more than one child, those children are the only people in the whole world that know, that are experiencing it, in a very similar way, like what that time was like, what happened. And I have noticed my children there's so much, they're closer in a different way, because they rely on each other. They really do.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Wow, we have like blown through just about our 30 minutes, but there's so much more we could talk about, and we
That's
will.
right. Yeah, we will.
But before we do go, I want a couple of things. First is, if someone wants to get a hold of you, how can they do that?
JuliaHoffmanCoaching.com. All my information is there.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Call
And
me, email me, whatever's convenient.
absolutely. I love it. If in conclusion, is there one thing that we just maybe didn't hit or didn't talk about, or one nugget of wisdom, as I call, that slipped through that, if you had to say just one thing to somebody who's, they're yelling at each other while the kid's there with you, what would it be? Maybe stop yelling.
I think it would be, our children are half, technically, genetically, they're half of each of their parents, right? Yep. When you insult and are cruel or say something to your ex, and the child hears it, because they hear it all, they feel it all, they hear it all. The child internalizes it, that's something bad about me. Something bad about me, because this is my father, this is my mother. So if people can think about it in that way, this is not about getting the best parent award. You are not going to convince your children that you're better than the other parent by saying bad things about the other parent. You're just going to make them feel like SHIT, and lower their self-esteem, and affect future relationships. So go on a walk with a very trusted friend, say all that stuff, say it to your therapist, but it does no good to anyone to put down the other person. So it really takes this is very grown-up stuff, but people can do it. People can do it, and it's so worth it. We have a beautiful family dynamic. We've worked our tushes off for it, and I'm very proud of where we are.
Yeah. Thank you, Julia, for joining us. This was really, really interesting stuff, and it's talked about just very tangentially, and not kind of from the side of the parents, how much that dynamic is really affecting the kids. And so thank you for talking about it today. I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah, it's incredibly rewarding. I was just texting with a past client, and not to be boastful, but he said, I never could have had this kind of relationship with my girl's mom that I do without your support. I mean, just the beautiful stories and the outcomes are really, I'm very honored to witness it. So thank you for the work that you do, Steve. Thank you for the work you do for families.
We come from the opposite ends of the firecracker.
Yeah, with the same goal.
With the same goal. It's exactly.
Yeah. I just want to feel it all, and yours is a little more, Section 8, a little more legalese.
Yep, it is. Legalese is the exact word for it. And with that, we are out of time. So thank you again. And everyone else, thank you for joining us today. If anyone has any questions on the topic, of course, you can post it here and we can get you in contact with Julia, or you can just contact her by yourself. So until next time, stay safe, stay happy.